Australian Michael Sheldrick is a driving force behind the efforts and campaigns of Global Citizen to end extreme poverty. Sheldrick has managed to reach millions of people in over 150 countries, and these campaigns have helped secure more than $40 billion towards local and regional organizations, providing access to life-saving medical treatment, sanitation, education, equity and empowerment, and climate resiliency efforts. He's a policy entrepreneur and has worked on campaigns globally with artists such as Beyoncé, Coldplay, Rihanna, Usher and Lady Gaga, just to name a few. Now, he has just launched his book in Johannesburg. Michael Sheldrick joins us to talk more about his work at Global Citizen and, of course, the book launch. So lovely to have you. Thanks so much for joining us here on the program.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm coming to you from a beautiful Cape Town, and it's great to be back in South Africa.
Yeah, what a view, what a view. And I have no doubt looking out your window just brings you warmth. I know South Africa just is something very special. And you know that because, I mean, Global Citizen's been here, you've performed here, and, you know, the whole idea is to bring ordinary people from the streets and help. But let's talk a little bit more, the heart of Global Citizen. When did it begin? Talk to us about its workings.
So we founded Global Citizen more than a decade ago. We were university advocates in Australia. I myself had my origin. I was one of those students at school that wasn't great, wasn't doing well, but had access to this fantastic teacher that, for whatever reason, saw potential in me when others didn't. And so after I got through school and being so grateful for the opportunities I had, but becoming so aware of the inequities and injustices in the world that would hold young people back from flourishing, from achieving their potential, we got involved in founding Global Citizen and what would become this extraordinary movement. And it was really predicated on something Nelson Mandela said during my last year of high school. It was one of his last speeches, I believe. He said he called on young people around the world to be the generation to bring about change. And he said, eradicating poverty is not about charity, it's about justice. And systemic challenges require systemic solutions. And so we built this movement with now more than 12 million citizen advocates around the world. And of course, as you mentioned, we're most well known for our pop meets policy approach, leveraging the power of popular culture to not just mainstream these issues and get people aware, but also to give them a way to take action. We say action is our currency. Yeah. And so since more than a decade later, this movement has ignited more than 40 million citizen actions. And believe it or not, more than a quarter of those actions have come from global citizens right here on the continent of Africa.
Fantastic. I mean, it's a wonderful, campaign, and it is a brilliant initiative where you literally are, you go out, have fun, and you're doing such good by doing it. But let's be real. We all have this great ambition to want to change the world and do all of these incredible things. But how do you get access to people like Beyoncé and Coldplay and all these incredible bands that are a part of this? Not only the musicians, but you also have got leading actors and actresses from around the world that have come together. So, but how do you begin? How do you sell that idea to say, come on, help us?
Well, part of the reason I wrote my new book, From Ideas to Impact, is I found myself getting messages on social media, on Instagram, on LinkedIn from young people, many young people on the continent, but also around the world, high school students, university students, members of Rotary clubs, all asking, how can they create change? How can they bring about systemic change in their cities, in their communities, at the national, state, even global level? And so it was really an opportunity for me to distill what we've learned co-founding Global Citizen, but also from some of the amazing advocates I've had the pleasure of working with. And some of those advocates have been here in South Africa, and I was delighted to have some of them join my book launch in Johannesburg on Tuesday evening, and we'll be speaking again tonight here in Cape Town. And one of the things I've learned from advocates around the world is, first of all, when we started Global Citizen, and many advocates agree with this, is often you just have the power of your ideas, right? And if you have specific measurable goals, especially now when people are crying out for solutions in a divided world. People will rally around those solutions like a magnet rod. And one thing I learned is sometimes the power of reaching out and really asking others to help. And when we first came to Johannesburg with the Global Citizen Festival, Mandela 100, and we launched that 6 years ago, I remember these advocates working on gender equality, period poverty issues, the injustices that some girls lose up to 60 days of school a year because they lack access to something as basic as sanitary pads and napkins. They reached out to us on social media and they said, you're bringing Jay-Z, you're bringing Beyonce. How about making this issue one of your major issues? Which we did, and we supported those advocates. And in the 6 years since, as I document in the book, more than 4 million girls have had access to sanitary pads and napkins that might not otherwise have had access. And so no one can do everything, but everyone can do something.
Yeah.
And sometimes with the clarity of your vision, there's people willing to support you if you know how the power to make the ask and ask for help.
Yeah. So, I mean, 6 years ago, we know what it was like. Global leaders came together at the F&B Stadium in Johannesburg in honor of Nelson Mandela's centennial year. What a memory that was. I mean, and all united behind this mission to end poverty and honor the life of an incredible global citizen, and that, of course, being Mandela. And this was the festival, of course, that you put on. In terms of years later, and we look back at that moment, how have lives been changed due to it? Because obviously you speak about the sanitary towels, but you know, here in South Africa, within the borders, what has been the legacy of that particular gathering?
Well, one of the things which I often talk about is it's one thing to have an event and have leaders make bold promises, but it's quite another to turn talk into action, ideas into impact. And so with Global Citizen, we're a 365-day-a-year movement, right? And when we hold these events, we continue campaigning. And so all of those global citizens that got on board, they've stayed engaged. They've stayed taking action right across the continent and around the world. And some of the impact we've seen, from those commitments that was pledged, actually it was this week, 6 years ago, resulted in impact in the lives of more than 122 million people. And yes, it was afterwards ensuring that President Ramaphosa and his government put real budget aside to make sure that money went to schools and provinces where girls in schools were in need of sanitary pads and napkins. But it was also about getting access to antiretroviral drugs to push back on the spread of HIV/AIDS. It was about providing farmers with access to seeds, to fertilizers, to resilient crops, as we're seeing with the impact of climate change, to be able to withstand droughts on the continent. But I think the most powerful legacy was actually the movement it built on Africa. I'm pleased to say that we have 8 staff in Johannesburg, and we also each year bring on 5 incredible fellows. We've done 5 classes, and I got to meet these fellows just a few days ago. They're social entrepreneurs. They're incredible. They join our team for a year. They're often working on their own business ideas. And so we've had 5 of these classes, and now they're generating impact in their own way. And this is a program we want to continue to support. And we're committed to South Africa. And that's why just recently with the government, as it assumes the presidency of the G20, together with the European Commission, we're committed over the next year to mobilize commitments to scale up renewable energy on the continent of Africa, to provide jobs, provide energy access, and ultimately give communities the resources to lift themselves out of poverty and thrive.
Amazing. I mean, that's absolutely incredible. In fact, you put me to it because I was really looking at the G20 and what it's all about and how you're going to be sort of looking at this. But the reality is we've got US President-elect Donald Trump coming in as well. And that certainly, I imagine, would have an effect on the G20 and especially the kind of initiatives you're talking about.
Well, President Ramaphosa, especially in the last 6 months with the Government of National Unity, he's seeing himself as a consensus builder and bringing together the most powerful leaders in the world. Literally almost a year from now, here in South Africa, will require the boldest acts of consensus ever seen. And this is really a litmus test for the G20 this year. But I think there's a real opportunity for South Africa to foster the kind of solidarity that the world hasn't seen. But what it will require is anchoring solutions in win-win outcomes. going to President-elect Trump and other leaders around the world and saying we have a shared interest here. And there are three practical outcomes that can be pursued. There can be alignment around the types of solidarity levies, whether that's taxing the most polluting industries in the world, whether it's those who have some of the world's biggest amounts of assets in the world, but ultimately saying that this will benefit both individuals in developed countries as well as developing countries. It's about scaling renewables and saying when you invest in the continent of Africa, ultimately it's in all of our interests to avoid the worst outcomes of climate change. As we've seen in America, you look at recent hurricanes in Florida and on the East Coast, no community will be spared from the ravages of climate change. And finally, you look at new sources of income, you look at Tesla and Elon Musk. They're one of the largest providers and traders of carbon credits in the world. Yeah. And we believe a viable carbon market with viable rules of the road can generate income for communities across the African continent while also mitigating climate change. And the good thing is since I've been here in South Africa, I've met some extraordinary entrepreneurs and pioneering businesses that are leading the way. And President Ramaphosa has this huge opportunity to showcase African innovation. There's solutions here, not just for the continent, but for the world.
All right, good luck. Good luck with the book launch. Thanks for chatting to us before that big launch in Cape Town, and we wish you all the best with it, and maybe a concert in South Africa next year?
Well, wait and see. One thing for sure, South Africa always welcomes us back. We're thrilled to be here, so watch its space.
We're watching carefully. Michael Sheldrick, policy entrepreneur and co-founder at Global Citizen, talking to us about the work of Global Citizen and, of course, his book launch.